Hey everyone, welcome to Headspace. I'm so glad you're watching this episode. You do not want to miss this episode, I promise you this. This is my interview with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. Before I read her bio, because I don't want to miss anything, I want to ask you, please subscribe, please forward this to other people. Please give us comments if you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify. Spotify doesn't do comments. But anyway, help us spread the word. The more people subscribe and are watching this on YouTube or listening to this via audio, the better guests we attract, because we can see, hey, there's an audience willing to listen to you. It helps us tremendously if you help us spread the word. So thank you in advance. I'm going to read Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor's a quick mini bio, because it's important that you understand the brilliance of this person, how amazing she is, the impact she's had in the world. So here you go. Okay, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is a Harvard-trained and published neuroscientist. In 1996, she experienced a severe hemorrhage in the left hemisphere of the brain, causing her to lose the ability to walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of her life. Her memoir, My Stroke of Insight, spent 63 weeks on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list. In 2008, Dr. Jill gave the first TED Talk ever that went viral on the internet, which now has well over 27 million views. Also in 2008, Dr. Jill was chosen as one of the Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world, and was the premier guest of Oprah Winfrey's Soul series webcast. Her new book, Whole Brain Living, which we discuss at length, The Anatomy of Choice and the Four Characters That Drive Our Life, is a #1 release on Amazon in categories ranging from neuroscience, nervous system diseases, and stroke. It's a remarkable book and remarkable insights, I promise you this. So, before we get to the interview, the shameless plug. This episode is brought to you by Xponential Life. This is a coaching program that I rolled out after 25 years of coaching high performers, athletes, entrepreneurs, business people, artists, fashion designers, financiers. This is something that's very dear and close to my heart. I'm one of those people, have a lot of compassion towards high performance, because we have some strengths and we have some flat sides, and the coaching program is designed to help people like that who have been successful but have sort of lost their spark, their inspiration. They need some more clarity, some joy, some happiness, and ways to move forward and continue to have the impact in the world and the gift they are to the world in a very sort of expansive, well-rounded way. That's the plug. So xponential.life, you can check it out if you're interested. And now, please enjoy an inspiring, insightful, witty, expressive interview with the brilliant Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the show.
I'm happy to be with you. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
And me as well. And so I want to just get this out of the way, and I hope you don't mind me expressing this, but I'm a huge fanboy of yours. And I was so thrilled when you agreed to come on, because 15 years ago, you did this show, A Strike of Insight. And it was a TED Talk, and I think it was the most watched TED Talk in history or something like that. And I remember binging on it. I think I watched it 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row or something like that within 2 or 3 days, because it was just so profoundly, not only moving, but it was enlightening, it was liberating, it was almost like a religious experience, because of the transcendence of what you were saying, right? And I just remember thinking, and I just listened to it, watched it again yesterday, just preparing for this, and I was thinking about it a little bit more. I was on a walk and listening to it in just in audio, and this is sort of my strike of insight about why this was so profoundly moving, is that here you are, a scientist, right? Obviously, incredibly accomplished, educated, doing research, you're knowledgeable about this stuff, and you're speaking to us like a poet. And to me, that was sort of the big thing. I think that's what made it just profoundly transformative, right? Because you're actually doing in this conversation what you talked to us about. You were operating from your whole brain, right? So for those of you for those of us in the audience who don't have no idea what I'm talking about, can you tell us a little bit about that talk? Because I think I'm not going to make it justice, because I'm just going to revert, reduce it to wows and amazing and enlightening. So can you give us a little bit more context about this, and we can start what is going to be, I know, an amazing conversation.
Thank you. So I grew up to study the brain and became a neuroanatomist, an anatomist of the brain and the nervous system, because I have a brother who's 18 months older than I am, who would eventually be diagnosed with the brain disorder schizophrenia. And so as a child, he was my constant companion, and everywhere we went together. And his perception of what had happened was often very different from what I perceived. And so I tuned in to, he's the closest thing to me that exists in the universe. And how is it we're interpreting our experiences differently, whether it was the inflection of voice in my mother when he may have perceived her as being angry and I perceived her as being scared. So I just tuned into, what am I as a living being? And really I was fascinated with what is normal. So I grew up to study the brain, and I was teaching and performing research at Harvard Medical School. And my research was really about how does our brain create our perception of reality, because I wanted to understand really what is normal and how does the brain experience the external world, and then we have a different interpretation, or what are the choices in how we experience what the information is that's coming in. So that was my area of research. And then at the age of 37, I woke up one morning and I was experiencing a major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain. And this was a congenital malformation that I did not know was there, and it blew that morning. And within the course of 4 hours, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. All the skill sets of that left hemisphere were gone, but I was still completely conscious. So it took 8 years for me to use the skill sets of my right hemisphere and its knowledge base on how neurons work as a neuroanatomist in order to rebuild the circuits of that left brain so that I could regain all function.
So you had a stroke.
I had a stroke.
And in when you describe it, it was remarkable because you went from using your full brain to not being able to use part of your brain, right?
Yes.
And to me, that's just really fascinating. I think that's what made it so profoundly insightful, your talk. So my question is this. Maybe I'll talk to. Maybe we can unpack about it a bit later when we talk about the 4 personalities, the 4 parts of the brain that you speak of in your latest book. But can you? This is just sheer curiosity. How amazing it is that after having something like that so traumatic in your brain, the brain can repair itself. Mm-hmm. How does that work exactly?
Well, if you stop and you think right here, right now, if we had a microscope looking at the neurons inside of your head, you would see that these little neurons, even though the bodies of the neurons are in a position, they are reaching out and making new connections and having a synaptic life of neuroplasticity. The brain is constantly rearranging which cells are communicating with which cells as we gain new information and new experience. So that's how we learn. And if the neurons didn't do that, then whatever we have would be what we had, and we wouldn't have the capacity to now link this idea with that idea in order to learn. So our capacity on an ongoing basis is that these neurons are experiencing undergoing a constant rearrangement so that we have this capacity to learn. But we have been taught as a society that that's not true. The neurons are in position. The ones you're born with are the ones you're going to die with. You're going to lose a lot along the way, but that's the structure. And that is true for the cell bodies, but not for the dendrites and how they're intercommunicating with everybody. So, and because of that, we have this capacity to learn. So that's what's going on in a typical brain in a typical moment.
Right. And so if I can I ask you? Obviously, I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert in this, so might ask you some dumb questions, right? So,
no, nothing's dumb. Ask me anything.
So. And because I'm trying to interpret this and apply it to real life and real challenges in life. Right. So if I had let's say if I had an experience of failure in the past, right? It could be academic failure, relational failure, business failure, something like that, and I had it enough times, perhaps. Do my neurons form almost like a riverbed that interprets this experience and tries to steer me away from avoiding this painful experience or disappointment, and basically says, "Look, you're doing it again. Don't do it." Is there like a riverbed there, like a circuitry in your terms, that now sort of directs the flow of things, including my emotions, my logic, how I interpret the world around me? Or is it more complex than that? I might be oversimplifying.
It's actually simpler than that. So consider you're nothing other than a collection of cells. That's
Correct.
All you are.
Yeah.
You're a bunch of neurons in position. And so any experience that we have because we have brain cells that are performing that function. So I can wiggle my finger because I have a group of cells that does that action. I can create sound, and you can place meaning on sound because we have specific brain cells that perform that function. Wipe out those cells and we are still conscious and alive, but we don't have those skill sets. So if I have an experience, first of all, you said something very important. In the past, if I had a bad experience in the past,
That's right.
In the past is not right here, right now. So the cells that are experiencing the right here, right now, those cells are not experiencing that trauma. That trauma is located in a group of cells that is routinizing over and over again from this past experience. So those cells then, they have created circuits, and the cells communicate with other cells in circuits. And the more often we run a circuit, the stronger that circuit runs until it can actually run on its own. And that's how we gain habitual thinking.
So you can change the circuitry, essentially, right?
Well, you can both help heal the circuitry from the past. But you also can bypass that circuitry and bring your mind into the present moment, because there's a lot of other circuitry going on. But if we think that everything is just flopping around in there and everything's just happening to us and it's running on automatic, then we don't know what our choices are. If I'm caught in my past, let's say my puppy dog died last August, and it broke my heart, and now everybody's saying, "Jill, are you going to get a new dog?" And it's like, "Oh, but my heart is broken." Well, that circuitry is still there. That trauma is still there for me, but I still have all this other circuitry of, yes, but I can bring my mind back into the present moment, and I can say, but I want to love another. Right? I want to love another little four-legged. So I can work with the pain from the past using the cells and circuitry that actually exists in the present moment. And we have the power. I mean, we're human brains. We have this amazing capacity to choose. Do I want to put my mind in the past? Do I want to put my mind in the future? Or do I want to bring my mind to the present moment? And that is a power that is amazing.
So thank you for saying that, and I think that really it's a great segue into into sort of this concept of full brain living, and just to sort of recap and basically maybe gain the interest of the audience who's sort of trying to figure out what are we talking about here. We're talking about a miracle. We're talking about the human ability to reinterpret the present and sort of shift towards that the past does not shape your future, and give us the ability to act differently and not act out of trauma, out of a place of trauma, out of a place of paralysis, out of a place of limitations that perhaps are not really there. And for those of us who struggle with perhaps, anxiety or fearfulness or things like that, and I think all of us do in one way or another, because we share this mammal brain with the rest of creation. What we're going to be talking about right now can change your life. Okay, can change your life because it can help you. It can help you gain the skill of reinterpreting reality in a way that's more constructive, life-giving, and you can be an amazing gift to the world through doing that. Am I overstating it a little bit?
Yeah, you did well, but I'm going to tweak it a little.
Okay,
First
thank you.
of all, you're already a miracle, regardless of which circuitry you're running.
Yes.
And our pain from the past is held in a group of cells that is specifically designed for us to learn from. Pain is energy. And whether I whack my shin and I experience a physical pain, or whether I have a trauma from the past and I have an emotional pain, pain is there in this group of cells to say, we must look at the pain. We must look at the pain and heal the pain. And one of the ways that we can heal the pain, because the pain stimulates us, moves us along this path of learning. And I can learn not to walk that close to that wall again, because I'm going to whack my shin again and I'm going to have more pain. Or let's say emotionally, I've had a trauma in the past, and now I have learned because of the experience that those kinds of scenarios that are similar to whatever that trauma was brings me pain. Well, I can get caught in the pain. I can run that circuitry over and over as my habitual emotional experience of the world, or I can actually bring in other parts of my brain in order to look at that experience and help that part of my brain self-soothe. Because the pain is real. And the goal is not to ignore the pain or just step away from the pain, but to look at the pain through other parts of our consciousness, self-love ourselves. Okay, what was my part of it? What was not my part of it? This is a trauma that happened to me in the past. It's in the past. This pain is designed to protect me in the future from something that looks or feels like what that was, but it's designed to be healed and loved so that I can come back into the present moment and have a new experience, having learned from that circuitry rather than being held paralyzed in that circuitry.
Of course, yes, and that I'm so glad you made that correction. Is that the sort of the alarmist part of us is there to protect us?
Yes.
That the alarmist part of the brain is not crazy. Is there to protect us, bring it into our consciousness. Hey, we've done this before, and there may be some danger there. Like in my experience, for example, I share the story all the time that, I had this really interesting thing. I was very, perhaps, you would consider successful professionally, but not romantically. And the reason for that, at some point of my life, it was in my early 20s, is because I'd experienced and remembered very painfully, very vividly the divorce of my parents. I was 14 years old. And basically, this was completely subconscious. I was not trying to do this. But I remember going, anytime a romantic relationship would get to a place where it may be serious, I would just undermine it, right? So in this particular scenario, the alarmist brain, part of the brain, was, hey, serving me up. Okay, you have to think about this because there might be some pain here. But my rational, my sort of self-loving, logical part of the brain was not kicking in, And I think that's the value of what we're talking about here, is that if we know that we can and we know how to do it, we can avoid months, years, and decades of unnecessary sort of being stuck or unnecessary pain or not making progress or all of that stuff. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's important that, it's interesting that we can heal our pain. We can nurture that, because what we're doing is we're healing ourselves. We're nurturing ourselves.
Yeah.
And if I was in a traumatic experience as a child, as you mentioned to me, the trauma that you experienced, and that's a severe, I'm not safe in the world. You were not safe in the world. And
Precisely.
this was your reality, and your alarm, alarm, alert, alert, fight or flight or flee or freeze and play dead. I mean, that had to be like strong for a long time because
It
you were
was years,
right?
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So this becomes your habitual training of your brain. And you needed that at the time because it was real, it was present, and it saved your life. That's what it was designed to do. And now, as you're years older, you're in a new environment, you've had time for that circuitry, the circuitry itself, it's still there. And you probably trigger that by certain smells, or certain languages may trigger you, sounds, smells, pictures, dreams, because
Absolutely.
it's all still in there.
It's,
So,
can I comment on this because I want to illustrate it for the audience? It's absolutely true. And well, the good news is that I was lucky enough to be able to get mentorship and get a sort of reframe this, and it all of that alarmist stuff went quiet, went away. Now, if somebody says to me, hey, I'm going to get married now, or even 5 or 10, 15 years ago, because I've been married now very happily for 23 years, my first reaction is marriage is awesome. It's
yeah,
not who does that.
right,
You shouldn't, you
right.
should like that. Have you thought this through? It's just not. My first reaction is completely rewired. My
Yeah.
circuitry is completely different. But I remember the first, like when you brought that up, remember the first probably 5 years after the switch happened, and the circuitry was new, but I remember how it could be awakened by a film where there's infidelity in the film. It could be even it could be even a comedy, and I remember being able to, that was awakened, and I remember going, to my wife, yeah, this is not funny for me. You're absolutely right. So it's dormant, it's there. It could be
Right.
rewired permanently, but then
Right.
every once in a while, especially if it's still fresh in your memory, it can be awakened. And I don't
Right.
have that trigger anymore, but I remember the first years it was very real. Although my thinking was completely different, but it would be
Now,
awakened by certain things specifically.
you say it's not there, but I'm going to guess that it is still there. And if you were extremely tired, or your nutrition was poor, or
Yes,
you
yes, yes. I believe that.
stress, that you would be able to trigger that. You would be closer to triggering that circuit than in your normal healthy way of being.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if I would be in the same setting of the movie, for example, it probably wouldn't be, but under a specific set of circumstances, absolutely, I think that might be true.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that you recognize that it's not bad. It's
Right.
not bad that that trigger's there, because that trigger is designed to save your life. I mean, it's
Correct.
waving the big flag of, hey, this is danger. This is pain. This is emotional pain. We don't want to do this again.
Yes.
And that is in the circuits of your amygdala. Information is streaming in from your sensory systems. You're watching a movie, and then that goes to your amygdala. And we have one in each hemisphere. And the hemisphere in the left, which says all my pain from the past, that joke, for them it was a joke, but for you that joke trumped right on that old trigger, and you
Yeah.
said, this isn't funny to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So now that we sort of illustrated this, and I think in a very real way, can you walk us through the four personalities that we contain in the brain? What a miracle that is, even in the first place. But it's just
Yeah.
fascinating how you differentiate those things, but and not in a negative way, but in a very positive, loving way, saying all of this is
Oh,
us,
it's
and
all
all of this is
part.
for us, and all of this is at our service, and all of this is a miracle. So can you walk us through the four personalities that we have inside?
So as you think about the brain and the nervous system and the evolution of the nervous system, there's a level of spinal cord sophistication. And then tissue gets added on top of that. And then there's an integration between the brainstem tissue and the spinal cord tissue below. And then on top of that, adds new tissue, which is eventually the emotional limbic tissue. And so then the kinks get worked out between the limbic tissue, emotional tissue, and the brainstem and spinal cord tissue. And that's the difference between a reptile and a mammal. Reptiles don't have limbic tissue. The mammal has limbic tissue. And then
so hold on. How does that work out in the reptile? I'm actually really curious about it. It might be geeking out a bit too much, but what does that mean exactly? Is that perhaps why the reptiles don't have expressed emotions, or how does that work exactly? Because you can tell the difference between a reptile and a mammal.
Right. They're on-off switches. Okay, so we have the level of sophistication of the brain stem, and then we're going to have the thalamus. Let me pull this out deep inside of here. Part of the thalamic tissue. And these are going to be on-off switches.
Okay.
But most of that is going to be at the level of that brainstem. So in here are groups of cells that tell my diaphragmatic muscle to contract. And so it contracts, and when it does, it sucks in air, right?
Got it. Okay.
Ability to breathe. There are cells in there that say I'm hungry. And so I eat, and it says, okay, that's satisfied. Now I'm going to turn that off. So this is my on-off switches. And we humans, we still have that at a brainstem level. But then we have this tissue added on top of it, part of the brain, but we add new tissue on top. And then that's the limbic or the emotional tissue.
Yes.
So we end up then with two amygdala, which is fight or flight. Am I safe? Am I safe from my past or my fear of the future? Or in the right hemisphere, am I safe right here, right now?
Yes.
Okay. So now I have temporality differences between these two hemispheres. And so I have the amygdala. And if the amygdala are on alarm, alarm, alert, alert, I'm not safe, then I move into my fight, flight, flee kind of situation. Right? But if I am safe, then right next to that are the groups of cells called the hippocampus in here. And then the hippocampus is for learning and memory.
Right.
But they're antagonistic. I have to feel safe in order to learn and memorize. So if I go to school and I'm being bullied and I don't feel safe, excuse me, if I have a test that day, I can't access the information I've stuck in my brain through my hippocampal system because I'm in alarm.
Oh, wow. That's powerful stuff.
That's powerful. So then the difference between a typical mammal and a human is the addition of the cortical tissue on top. So as we look at this, if the left hemisphere is a past and a future, then the emotions are going to be the emotional experience from my past and of my fear of the future. And my thinking brain is going to be have a past. I can remember what shoes I put on and why I put them on today. And I can project to what am I doing this evening for dinner, right? Without emotion. I'm just having a thinking, rational relationship between me and the external world. So and then in the right hemisphere, I also have emotion, but that's of the right here, right now. What does it feel like to be in my body? What does it feel like to have glasses on my nose? What does it feel like? What's the temperature? Am I sweating? And did I turn my furnace up too high? So the experience of the present moment, and then also the experience without judgment of we are one family. We are a collective whole because me, the individual, I know that I begin and end where my skin hits the air because I have a group of cells in my left hemisphere that tells me that. But if I lose that group of cells, then I perceive myself as this massive conglomeration of beautiful cells and this big ball of energy. So
don't you think this is, and this is actually a question I've been meaning to ask, what you just said doesn't sound like a scientist speaking. It sounds like a spiritual person speaking, or a poet, right? Or a mystic. How does that even mesh together with what you're saying?
Every ability we have, every ability, whether it's a mechanical movement or a language or an intellectual concept or a spiritual experience. Every ability we have is because we have brain cells that perform that function.
Right.
So if I have a spiritual experience, that means somewhere in my brain, there are cells that are designed for me to have that experience.
Wow.
So the spiritual experience, there can be all kinds of spirituality out there, or there can be all kinds of rage or hate or ugly out there.
Correct.
But if I don't hook into that with the group of cells in my brain that have that experience, then I'm not going to have that experience.
Yeah. So basically, you are built to be able to have that experience in the first place. Correct.
Every ability you have is based in cells. Now, is there a spiritual world beyond us? I don't have an opinion on that because
Correct.
I'm not dead, right? We'll all learn that when we die. But in the meantime, my ability to feel and to know that, first of all, just to know that there's a group of cells in your left hemisphere, parietal region, all the sensory systems are bringing information in, and it's going to that parietal region, and it's building inside of your brain a holistic image of where you are. Right? This is you. This is how I define me.
Yes.
And it's a hologram. And wipe out those cells with a stroke or some kind of a brain trauma, and I still exist and I'm still here, but I don't have the perception that I'm separate from everybody else because the hologram has disappeared.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Okay, so I distracted you from. So can I propose a sort of a way to help people understand this, because this is obviously fairly, cerebral thing, right? So can you run us through the 4 dimensions of the brain, and then if we can move to, let's say, okay, here are the 4 things quickly. Right. Obviously, there's so much depth to it that we won't be able to unpack it, but just on a high level, and then okay. Here are the 4 things that you were given. This is miraculous. How can you practice whole brain living in very real situations, like 2-3 quick scenarios? Can we do that?
Sure.
Okay.
So we've already built the 4 characters. They're going to be the emotional tissue in the left hemisphere, the emotional tissue in the right hemisphere. It's going to be the thinking tissue in the left hemisphere and the thinking tissue in the right hemisphere.
Okay.
So these are 4 modules of cells that we all have from an evolutionary perspective. Okay. So character 1 is what I call that left thinking tissue. And the left thinking tissue is the rational, organized part of who I am that relates me to the external world. Right.
So it's you and I talking and saying, hey, I probably have 20 minutes left or 30 minutes left. I need to be aware of that. Okay.
Yeah. And the sense of urgency, right? Because it's always behind.
Okay.
And, right. It's always worried. So this is our alpha type personality. It's our rational part of who we are. It has language. We're communicating with language. It organizes. Its goal is to create me as safe in the external world. Well, I am not safe in the external world. None of us are. We're organic. We could die in an instant, right? But we don't focus on that, right? So what we do is we use this portion of our brain to control people, places, and things around us so that we feel safe in our environment. And one of the things that character 1 will control is time. So it is ability to relate. And we all know this part of who we are. It goes to work. It cares where the stapler is, and we put the stapler back where it belongs so that we can control our environment. So that's
it's basically the me and the survival of me and the flourishing of me in particular context, time, space, everything, right? This is, I'm focused on me, and I'm focused on progressing me in the context of the rest of the world, of other people, of society, family, whatever, right? Is that correct?
It's linearly. This happens, and that happens, and then this happens, and then I feel safe.
Got it. Okay.
And there's hierarchy, and I know where I exist on the hierarchy of all the ladders that I'm climbing.
Sure.
Right? So that's the structure, and it defines the social norm of right, wrong, good, bad, and how I'm going to fit myself into that social norm.
Got it. Okay, that's good. Helpful.
Okay, so that's character 1. Character 2, and that's left thinking. Character 2, yes. Character 2 is left emotion. So
Okay.
this is also of the past and of the future. There's a linearity of time, and I remember all the pain from my past. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember the pain from my past because I need to learn from that so that I don't put myself in the same situation so I can protect myself.
So I can project this to guard my future and to avoid it in the future, correct? Okay.
I can learn from it so that I can then use my other parts of my brain to prevent me from setting myself up for the same trauma that I experienced before.
Right. Okay.
Okay? So that's going to be, this is all the pain from our past. Deep inside of here is our addiction tissue. So the
Ah.
ability to crave. So if I have a craving then that leads to my addiction, then that's all wrapped up in my past experience of what I want. So that's character 2.
Okay.
We go to psychotherapy for 30 years in order to talk about and routinize and work in that trauma. And now we know that there are other ways of working with trauma that actually includes pulling ourselves by choice into the other parts of our brain.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Not
That will save
negating,
a lot of money for people listening right now. 5 years
exactly,
of therapy. Yeah.
and not negating the value of that pain, but that pain is a lesson, not a lifestyle.
Wonderful. Okay,
That
so
should
what's character number 3? Also emotional, correct?
Yes. Character 3 is the emotional limbic tissue of the present moment. So it's really experiential. What does it feel like in my body? Because there's no me, the individual, in the right hemisphere. That's over here in a group of cells in the left hemisphere. So the consciousness of the right hemisphere is me as an energy ball in relationship to all the energy all around me. And so what does the present moment feel like? What does it feel like when I dive into the water and the pressure of the water pushes against my body? What does that experience feel like? What is it? This is our adrenaline junkie. If I jump off a bridge with a bungee, whee, right? The experience. So that this is the present moment experience of and what it feels like inside of my body. So that's character 3.
So this is basically me. I think this. When was this? Yesterday, walking through the field this spring when we record this in Texas, and the bluebonnets are in bloom. So this is me thinking about, hey, I need to still do ABC. This is on my schedule. I need to make sure that this happens, and then this other me takes the emotional in the moment. Me takes over and goes, my gosh, the bluebonnets are amazing. Let's just savor that. This is like this. It takes over because it's beautiful. It's in the present moment. It doesn't really relate to me personally. It's just an experience in the now that takes over. Is that what happens? There's like a switchboard somewhere that.
That's character 4. That's
Okay.
the next one.
Okay.
Because the experience is an active state. I am
Okay.
experiencing something. I am experiencing.
So I'm being aware of it. Okay, so that's number 4.
Number 4 is the conscious awareness that, oh my God, I'm alive. I am this amazing life force power, and I'm in a field, and there are these beautiful flowers, and aren't I, oh my God, this celebration of existence.
So the 3 then in that moment in the field with the bluebonnets is just the awareness of it. So it's not really
awareness. Character 4 is the awareness. Character 3 is now I'm rolling in the field.
Okay. Now I can see the difference. Okay.
I'm actively interacting with it.
Sure. Okay, I get it.
So it's creative, it's innovative, it's entrepreneurial. I can roll down that hill 18 different ways. I don't have to do it the way everybody else does it, right?
Yeah.
I can take a paints and I can create something completely new without having to color in the box of the left hemisphere, because there is no right, wrong, good, bad. So this is character 3 is the creative possibility, active part of who I am. It's physical, it's in the body. I'm going to go play sports just because I love the experience of the sport. I'm going to compete and keep score because my left brain, character 1, wants to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, good.
So
Good.
Play the sport because my body loves the experience.
So it's playful. There's no rationalizing of it at all. It doesn't keep score. It's just there. It's this playful in the moment.
I'm here. I've got, I'm just free. It's
Yes,
freedom.
yes, yes. Okay,
And
perfect.
then
Okay.
filter four is that right thinking tissue, which is simply that connection of spirituality. I am in utter awe that I exist at all, that I'm
Yes.
alive. Oh my God. And there's no judgment and there's no separation between what I am and what you are. So I am in awe of you. And it is like we now can just be humanity.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
It feels like we need character four to play a more active role
Yeah.
in culture and society these days, don't
Yeah.
you think?
Well, there's no question. We have been skewed to the left hemisphere
Is that
as a
right?
societal norm,
Why do you
and
think that is? Is this culture? Is it just sort of evolution, survival? Why do
I
you
think,
think we're skewed to the left?
well, I think that there's several reasons. But as soon as language became a common, not just a speaking, but as the common person, all of us, the masses, began writing and reading, that is a left brain skill set. And
Okay.
so that became very prominent in our society. And those who could read and write and speak well, they started climbing the ladder. And so the rest of us are looking at these people going, well, if I get educated and I become an expert in my field and I have mastery of my language, then I can become an expert in my field. And as I become an expert, my house is bigger, my bank account is bigger, I have more toys, society looks at me as a success. And that became the value instead of the value of what I am as a human and that all the possibility and potential is there. Instead, we started competing with one another through the left brain dominance of I want higher, you want higher, we're going to compete
But isn't
instead of
that isn't that primal biological, like just for survival, or
for
is it
half
just?
the brain.
Oh, got it. Okay, I
For
understand.
half the brain. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What
Right,
I'm
right,
saying,
right.
we need whole brain living. We need to be balanced between the value of what we are as humanity in relationship to this beautiful planet, because otherwise our materialism and our me, and the greed and all the values of that left brain, if it is not balanced by the right brain value, then we're going to get skewed to the left, and we're literally going to hurt ourselves as a species, which is what we're currently doing.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. So can we run some scenarios? For example, real life scenarios. Okay, so we know the four characters approximately. In broad strokes, I think it takes a little bit of practice to understand that. And I think the scenarios actually help with that. So let's say, yeah, let's say this. Let's say someone has been, is going through a breakup, a young person. She wants not doesn't want to be alone. She wants to be with a partner. She wants to get married. She wants to fall in love. She believes in romance, but it hurts a lot. Okay, it's recent or maybe a year ago, whatever. How do you practice whole brain living in this scenario?
Okay, so character two, I'm not happy. I'm sad. My future is not taking shape the way I want it to be. How attractive am I to any partner?
Okay,
And what kind of partner am I going to attract if I'm essentially wallowing in my pain from the past, right?
correct. Yes.
So there are some character ones who like to fix everything. That's what character ones do. So a character one might look at a character two and find a character two attractive because they want to save them, right? So
Ah,
one
okay.
says, I can come in, I've got money, I've got resources, I can surround you, but there's going to be this hierarchy, right? There's always going to be this hierarchy. So if you're looking for an equal, forget it. You're not going to attract that.
It's not going
You're
to
going
happen. Yeah.
to either another person in pain, and you're just going to have a pain relationship, or you're going to attract a character one who wants to come in and fix you and pull you up out of your misery, right? Well, the character three, which is our innovation and our creativity and our openness and our entrepreneurial and possibilities. Oh my God, if I allow myself to say, well, that relationship, it fizzled out. Okay, let that go. I'm going to come back to my own joy. I'm going to live in my own present moment with this beautiful character one over here that keeps my life organized. And I'm going to exude when I meet people. Well, I'm going to attract a completely different person.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
And character threes get together and they play, and character threes and character fours are all in the present moment, so they're attracted to one another. But it's not just about, you gave me a scenario that turned me in relationship with another, but it's not about my relationship with the others. It's about the relationship I have as an individual
And that's
between
and
character
that was
one,
actually
two, and
exactly,
four.
and that was the question. My question is, how do I,
Yeah,
instead of attracting, or being attracted, or even attracting somebody who
right,
really it's not going to help me in the long term,
right,
how do I have this internal dialogue and full
right,
brain experience to get out of that and make choices that are healthy,
right.
amazing? How do I do that internally?
Well, the first thing you have to do internally is know who you are. You
Right.
have to know your own four characters. And that means you have to sit down. You have to think about, who is my character one? Give her a name. I call mine Helen. My real name's Jill, but I call character one Helen. It's
Helen,
short
yeah.
for Helen Wheel, she gets it done, right? She's busy.
Yeah.
And she runs the to-do list, and she gets me on the phone, and she gets me here on time. She's punctual. And Helen is Helen. And Helen wears earrings. She's the only one of me that does. So who is your character one? Who likes your character one? Who
Uh-huh.
doesn't like your character one? Build the network, draw on a piece of paper the neural network of your character one. Who is this person? What is this person good at? Um,
Interesting.
and where does it come out in your life? Do the same for character two. Give your little character two a name. Give your character three and four a name. Who likes those? When I have a broken heart, when my puppy died last August, who do I call? Who now? There's some people I'll never call. I don't want to call a character one to fix it. There's no fixing my pain. I need
Right.
somebody to hold me and be with me. And so I called my character four friends who could come in and love me and just hold the space and say, "Oh my gosh, she was such a great little dog. I know your
Wow.
heart is broken." Right.
Oh,
So
yeah.
and so, and something's really important is that two character twos in relationship, in an argument, will never find resolution. They will
Oh,
never find
absolutely. Yeah,
resolution. So
absolutely.
every time you get in a fight, that's your character two. And your little character two, if you're fighting with their character two, notice which of you is man or woman enough to step out of their character two into their one, three, or four.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so I'll give you another scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody who is ambitious, creative, successful, and we reach that point where we we crave A, B, C. Okay, success, status, financial stability. Let's say, right?
Right.
And we go, okay, this is if I only, I will be happy. Right?
Right.
You get to that place, which is
Right.
a lot of us go through this sort of cycle. Then you reach the end of the rainbow. You have the bank account, maybe the bigger house, a little bit more stability, respect of
Right.
your peers, and you go, "Uh-oh, I'm empty. I think my relationships are not good. My team doesn't like me anymore. We used to be great partners in the company that we started, but now we're sort of at odds, and things are tense. Or my spouse, man, I've overinvested in this, and my spouse, wants a divorce or whatever. My kids don't like me. Yeah, and so you get to this place of the spark is out. Your inspiration is gone. You went on this fuel for, let's say, 10, 20 years, 15 years. And you find yourself in this sort of, okay, I'm lost. I lack direction. I don't have clarity.
Yeah.
What do you
Well,
do?
I know. Well, that's all character one value. I mean, what you
Okay.
described was, we gave all the power to the character one to run our life. Because the character one was running our life, we were not emotionally available to play with our spouse. Well, our spouse may have been attracted to us because they knew that we were going to have a big house and a lot of money, but
Yeah.
they wanted us, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So they come in and they may be a strong character one also. And it's like, well, we have achieved plenty. Now we need to play. We need to travel. We need to spend time together. We need to have children. We need to be a family. But if I'm just climbing the character one ladder, then I'm selecting the character threes and, probably my character four, which is my relationship with a higher being, unless I'm just asking my higher being to please give me this deal so I can make more money, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how some people pray. It's all with the intention of that character one.
ATM machine prayers. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. And then our spouse, who used to be happy and more in their character 3, and they're running the house with their strong character 1, they move into their character 2 because they don't have you. They have your money. And they have the responsibility of your family, your kids, and your parents, whatever, but they're not happy. And so you are the fix-it, character 1. And if character 1 can't come in and fix it, well, character 1 can't come in and fix it because they don't want the character 1 as their lover, as their partner, as the, co-parenting. They want a friend. They want an equal. So the dynamics, the beauty of this is there's 4 inside of me. And when I know the 4 inside of me, and I can use a tool that I call the brain huddle, BRAIN, to bring all 4 of my characters into communication with one another so that in the next moment, we, the collective whole of me, consciously chooses how I want to be in the next moment.
Yes. Okay. So let me give you a third scenario, and what I would love for you to explain is how do you practically do the huddle, right? After the third scenario. Okay. Third scenario, I'm predicting now. I'm seeing the pattern. So third scenario, I build my life on creativity, on feeling, on wholeness. I'm sort of the Woodstock person of the bunch, and you build your life like that. You go with the flow, whatever feels right. If it feels right, do it, and you are in this sort of hippie, flower child place, which is a really happy place. Not too much pressure, not a lot of financial pressure, and you build around that. You're even sort of adjusting your life to the preference, the thing that you enhance and want to do more of because you feel like you're built that way, right? But then sort of you reach a time where you're very happy. You don't have a lot of responsibilities. You go with the flow. You enjoy nature, and your student loan comes in, and they still want your money. For example, you can't be forgiven, or that sort of the free flowing love relationships starts hitting against your desire to actually build a family, have responsibility, have a structure, and the kids that were born now need some parenting, some other things that are not necessarily inherent to the lifestyle, to your preferences. So unpack that scenario, and then we can switch to the huddle. I would love to hear how can you do it in a very practical way in your daily life.
So what the description that you gave is, a character 3. A character 3 is a dominant character 3. They have rejected, for whatever reason, the character 1 scenario, right? Yeah. Which is also the opposite. The first one you gave me was the character 1 scenario, who completely rejected the character 3 playful, right? Work. I have no life. I have no relationship. My kids hate me, right? Yeah. So you gave me the 2 extremes. And so in whole brain living, so you're saying like I'm born a character 3.
Yes, that's what you feel, right? You feel you have a natural lean for whatever reason, right? But nature, nurture.
Right. Yeah. But the point here is that that's only a quarter of my brain. So that scenario is no different or any better than the character 1 that comes in and only uses a quarter of their brain. The fact of the matter is that we have a whole brain. So it's like, okay, so I'm born, and when we're born, we're an infant in this hand thing. Oh, that's mine. There comes this moment in a child's brain when they realize, oh, that thing is mine. And so now I can hit it against things, and I can chew on it, and I can do things at will with the hand. And that's the description you're giving me of your only a character 1 or a character 2, 3, or 4. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, an infant realizes I can do this, and I can differentiate between the different parts of who I am. And now I have manual dexterity that gives me so much more power in the world. And the same is true for the brain, because I'm not just a character 3. I have some character 1 skill sets, or my whole life looks like hell. And some people are like that because for some emotional reason, perhaps somebody came in and said, you're a slob. You're always going to be a slob, and you're never going to have any value because you're never going to get anything done. And they're going, okay, Right. Their little character two says, okay, so that's who I am. Because we believe all this stuff from the other people and the
Wow.
influence of,
Wow.
of people, right? Or let's take a life scenario and you're in a traumatic environment that says you're not safe. We're going to constrict you. You're never going to be anything. If you're lucky, you end up like having a life outside of your trauma, or you're just going to have a life where you're routinizing on your trauma. So what whole brain living does is it gives you your choices. Well, I can't step into my character 3 joy if I don't know that part of me. I can't just step into my character 1 if I don't know that part of me. So by differentiating these 4 different parts of who I am gives me then the ability to bring all of those into the present moment and say, okay, I've been living most of my life as a character 3, but I do have character 1 skill sets, and I do that. When am I on time? When am I producing or comparing or analyzing or being mechanical? When am I being linear? Well, maybe I don't do it very often, but I can train myself now in that skill set and not treat it as though it's bad or wrong.
Correct. Okay, that's great. That's
Part
wonderful.
of who I am, yeah.
So let's talk about the huddle. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the huddle. It could be whatever. I lost my job yesterday and I'm panicking,
Yeah.
or I
Okay.
just have an anxiety attack, or how do I
Right.
move on from a breakup, from a divorce?
Okay. So every scenario you just gave me a scenario where I'm going to automatically move into my 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Which I think it's what most people feel struggle with, because it's so
Yes.
it takes over, right? It takes over.
It's in its own weird way. It's delicious. And,
Yes.
yeah. Now, let me say this from a neurological perspective, that all of that pain, all of that routinizing, all of that, oh, this is bad, oh, woe is me, is a cellular circuit. And cellular circuits run in 90-second intervals.
They
So, oh
do.
my God, I lost my job. Oh my God, I'm going to feel horrible, and I'm going to feel less than, and I'm going to feel like, oh my God, and all my fear. And then I'm going to have a physiological response, and I'm going to cry, or I'm going to yell, or I'm going to hit something, or whatever my physiological response is. From the beginning to, oh my God, I lost my job, to, oh my God, I want to hit something, takes less than 90 seconds.
Okay. Really? It does. Okay.
90-second cycles. Now, I can stay in my fear or in my anger or in my whatever for a whole lot longer than that, but what am I doing? I'm rethinking the thought, oh my God, now my children won't have new books for school, and my wife is going to get so mad at me, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and then I can stay in this fear forever. And then what do? Well, then I turn to drugs or alcohol, and then what does that do? It just like routinizes, right? Routinizes. Well, paying attention to the fact that I am simply a biological creature, and I have these beautiful cells, and I have some say in what's going on. But let's take your scenario and say, okay, I'm going to say, okay, I lost my job. Where did I go? I personally, because I'm well trained in whole brain living, thought, oh my God, one door closes, another door opens.
Right.
Right? I didn't wallow in the, oh my God. It was like, no. The character 4 is saying, big picture here. One door closes. I didn't like that job anyway. Apparently, I didn't have a good relationship with some of those people. And now it's like new possibility. So then my character 3 comes in and says, well, I always wanted to start this business, and I always wanted to do this. And I thought, I'd be really good at graphic design. And I've never tried that, but I do a lot of it at home for fun, right? So how do I my character 3 joy and fun and the natural skill set and say, okay, how do I make a living doing that? Isn't that what entrepreneurialism is?
But let's roll it back just a little bit. You're saying when the wave comes, and I think that's a very common thing. Okay, how do I handle things where literally my brain, my emotions, even my body in some sense gets hijacked by this character too, right? And do I, like my immediate reaction, let's say somebody says something mean to me, that feels mean, like an attack. It might not even be an attack, but it feels that way.
Right.
Is there a way do you just say, hey, 90 seconds, baby?
Yeah, actually I do. I decide that I'm going to, well, first of all, most of us don't like pain, right?
Yes.
Pain means run the other direction, get away
Correct.
from it. No, stand in your pain. It won't last more than 90 seconds unless you keep routinizing it. But observe the fact of, oh my God, I'm experiencing pain. And as I'm experiencing that emotional pain, now I'm going to observe it instead of simply engage with it. Because it's triggered, right? It's going to trigger, it's going to go, but I can sit in my characters 1, 3, and 4 and observe the pain. And as soon as I do that, I'm no longer having the pain, I'm observing the pain. And when I observe the pain, after that 90 seconds fulfills itself, it can stop. Wow. Oh my God. Our pain is not going to kill us unless we keep running.
And I think part of it is, as you said, if you're trained in that, you will more readily, because you're actually rewiring circuitry to be able to observe, right?
That's exactly right.
Is there any anything that sort of accelerates that or gets us there quicker, especially if you're new at this, right? You haven't been trained in that, you haven't trained yourself, you haven't set up the circuitry. Is there something that you can do proactively to be more able to do that, or even in the moment? What do you do?
You got to know what your choices are. What are my choices? My choices, I can step into my 1, I can stay in my 2, I can step into my 3, I can step into my 4 at any moment in time, but I have to know who they are. So I have to do the work of differentiating those different parts so that I know who I am. If I don't know
So I guess what you're saying is that if you prepare yourself, if you think it through, you're pre-preparing, you're pre-wiring your circuitry, essentially.
Absolutely.
That's what you're saying.
Well, you're strengthening you're strengthening your ability to instantaneously step into whichever of your 4 characters you want.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So if I'm being emotionally triggered because, oh my God, I just got fired, I'm going to have this hit, right? I got fired. My automatic response now, because I've practiced it so much, is, wow, deep breath, 1 door closed, a new door open, new possibility. Well, you know, the only reason I can do that is because I've trained character 4 to look at the world that way and to be such a strong part of who I am.
Right. That's great. And now that I ask, I had this question, but I think what you said answers the question. Is that okay? We just described the scenario of in the moment being triggered, your brain, one part of your brain hijacks, creates a whole cycle of things in your body, experiences, feelings, things like that. And that's so. How do you? So you're reacting. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the same approach of training, leaning into it, understanding, practicing, right? You learn by doing, will help us proactively think a certain way, right? I mean, like we're not being triggered, we're not being fired, but I'm going, you know what? There may be more to life than X, Y, Z.
Well, that's why absolutely. You don't learn how to manage trauma when you're triggered into your trauma.
Right.
You have to learn because you need to know what are my choices. And again, it's like the hand. I can use all 4 of my digits because they have each been trained and strengthened. So if I'm going to play a musical instrument, if usually that ring finger is pretty weak, you have to exercise it. Well, maybe that 3rd finger, that index finger then, or your index finger, whatever is representative in the brain. I have to practice being in my joy as a playful character 3. So how do I do that? What am I remotely interested in? What am I remotely good at? What do my pals want to do? Do we play basketball? Do we kick soccer ball? Do we go swim? What do we do? Do we just go? And then how do I practice my own character 4? How do I find my own peace? What does it feel like when I stand on the beach and I look out over the sunset and I see this glorious big golden ball sharing its golden energy with me and all the colors of the sunset, and I just say, wow, oh my God, I'm a part of that, and it's a part of me. Or I stand on the top of a mountain and I look out and it's like, wow, look at the glorious expansiveness because of what I am and what life is. Practice these things. Let them be a healthy part of who you are, so that in an instant, your boss can say to you, "You're fired," and you think, "Oh my God, go to the mountaintop." And I go to the
Yeah.
mountaintop, and my whole soul relaxes in possibility. And oh my God, there's change in my life. And change is the only thing that's predictable. And here's an opportunity. Here's a real change. And it's like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah. And also proactively, you can go, you know what? I've always dreamt of starting a new company or writing this book or developing this new skill, and your second sort of personality goes, yeah, you've never done this, it's not a good idea, you're too old for this. And it's, people, you're going to be ridiculous, people are going to make fun of you, you're going to lose status and respect. And then you can probably bring in then the 3 and the 4 and going, yeah, but it will be fun. And actually, right?
New possibilities.
Absolutely.
I'll have more time for those things, right?
Absolutely. That's great. That's wonderful. Well, this is so amazing. And once again, thank you for doing this. Can you tell us, I know that you can, clearly from this episode, you can see this can change your life, right? If you learn, if you develop those skills, if you train yourself, this can change tremendous thing. And this is a perfect, obviously, interview for Headspace, which is the whole topic of the podcast and YouTube channel. Can you tell us how we can learn from you? You told me offline that you actually developed some courses, and I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I've had such a positive response to whole brain living that I'm going to run some courses this summer. I'm going to run courses for individuals, an individual group, which is anybody. And then I'm going to run another course that is specifically for educators and parents, so that the school systems within the village within which our kids are reared. So if you're an educator, if you're interested in more about this, I'd say the easiest way to contact me is through my email, Dr. Jill, DRJILL, at drjilltaylor.com. Maybe you could post that on your...
I will, on the show notes, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that way then just contact me and say I'm interested, and then I'll put you on the list, and then you'll get all the information about how to register. It's going to be 4 75-minute sessions with me. I'm going to run probably a couple of these this summer, and then I'm going to hire other people to do that, because I'm a Pigpen character 3 and I want to go play. So I'm going to show up as a character 1 Helen, so that I can share this in a healthy way with others. But if you want to be with me live, then this summer is going to probably be the best way to do that.
Okay, so if you're an individual, what are our options here?
So, if you're an individual, I'm gonna have. So this is why I've started the courses. Is I've had so many people come to me, and someone says, I work with judges. Judges have a very high rate of suicide and their well-being. So really, whole brain living is about helping people find their own peace, and it helps their own well-being. So I'm working with someone who's working with judges. I'm working with an attorney who's working with attorneys. I'm working with a hospice caregiver who's working with hospice caregivers, because I'm like a big neuron. I'm the central hub, but it's really about how do I empower you to know your own 4 characters. And that's level 1. And then level 2 will be, if you want to get certified in whole brain living to bring it to your group, then there will be a certification program for people to be able to do that. So I'm just starting up. It's very exciting. And this summer will be where we go. Whole brain living.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you. We'll put as many of those notes and links on the show notes, and thank you for not only being such a light for so many years, but now, I'm particularly grateful for you for the fact that you actually stepped out of the play and embraced character 1 for a little bit, so we can benefit as many people as possible and equip them to actually be trained and train themselves for full human flourishing. It's really remarkable.
Thank you. I feel like that's what I'm here for. I feel very blessed that the whole stroke experience happened. And the TED Talk was a big success. It was the first TED Talk to ever go viral on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember.
But it missed. It gave people a sense of reverence for me, but not for themselves. And that was was for me, because I wanted people to revere their own ability. And
That's right.
whole brain living is now the answer to that. So that's why Helen did come online. She got the job done. The work is now available, and doing that. But Pigpen really wants to go and play and be with God.
Well, that's wonderful. You've been an absolutely delightful guest. I really, really appreciate your coming on and taking the time.
Thank you for everything you're doing to help people. I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate the invitation.